I've actually, this is an interesting question about when you first begin to say what's going on in my life that makes me different. For me, that was a very early period in grade school, essentially. Um, I was very bright kid, read a lot, and very tuned to the world around me. And I realized that I'm not seeing all this the way other kids are seeing it. And you are very much part of a core group of boys, and you're riding your bicycles and going places and doing things. And when you're watching your friends suddenly take an interest in the girls and start playing those early games, and that didn't interest me in particular. And so I'd say about the sixth grade in particular, I begin to say, well, I kind of begin to understanding that a handsome male teacher, Mr. Ewing, really kind of got me upset when he was leaning over me helping with my schoolwork. I mean, I begin to realize there's a component where I like these men. And it wasn't directed particularly to schoolmates, but to older, handsome men who were around me. And that's when I begin to realize this is substantially not the reaction that other young boys were having.
You know, did you discuss it with anyone?
No, not at all. I think particularly in that era, there was absolutely no communication. And I'm not sure, even as smart as my parents were and as worldly, that I could have communicated what was going on. But no, there was no real conversation. The best you could do was start looking in dictionaries and card catalogs for keywords, and even that was very difficult. And that was the process that I began to use. And you listen very carefully to people's comments. Occasionally you would hear somebody make a comment about a gay person. We would say gay now. Back then they would call them a faggot or a queer. And sometimes it wasn't necessarily negative. It was just a passing comment. But you'd listen very carefully for those sorts of clues that there was something going on around that topic beyond your own life. I think my childhood was fairly typical. There was a lot of kind of sexual interplay, people trying to figure out sexuality. Because I was well-read, I was kind of more expert about explaining how this really works. You know, young boys are discussing how sex happens. Most of them have never had a conversation with an adult. They don't even really understand how the biology or the anatomy of a woman. And so I was kind of an expert because I had managed to read enough and had some pretty good discussions with my mother, who was very open about talking to her kids. But there was still no ability to communicate on the topic of same-sex attractions or being gay or being queer or whatever those words might have been. It just wasn't on the table or wasn't talked about. I think it's more confusion for some kids. In my case, I think it was more confusion of how to sort this out. I had a good set of loving parents, a strong ego. I understood from my academics in school that I was smart. And so I had lots of ideas and goals for life. And so I think it became a sense of, well, what do I do about this more than feeling particularly guilty? And interestingly enough, I can actually date the time and place. I was in the 7th grade, and I had been left, and for an afternoon, my mom and dad went somewhere. I was roaming around the house, and suddenly this whole question came to my own self-dialogue about what am I going to do? And then I realized that it might be actually kind of interesting to walk into a room and see everything completely differently than anybody else. And that despite the negatives, this might be kind of interesting because what I'm seeing and what I'm dealing with isn't what anybody else is seeing or dealing with. And so I had kind of this third track sort of view of the possibilities, and I really kind of consciously quit worrying about it so badly. I kind of took an attitude, well, I'll figure it out, but this might be kind of interesting because it's kind of unique, and I kind of like that idea.
And did it work for you?
Yes and no. It's still very difficult. Yeah, I mean, I found more resources and talked to a few more people. I don't know how to answer that exactly. There was a point much later in my life when I came to Seattle to go to college, when I became really involved in cruising guys and meeting men, and but I didn't find the satisfaction personally that I wanted. out of those relations, even though I enjoyed them, but they were adventuresome, they didn't seem to lead toward that kind of example that I had grown up with, a family and kids and all that sort of thing. So even though I could deal with them, it didn't seem to me that this could be the only option in your life. So that was part of a problem, how to solve that dichotomy. On the one hand, you knew very well that you liked other guys and had lots of fun with them, and there was no end to that. But you also had the sense of the need to have family and kids and settle down. And so there was perhaps a dilemma for myself and lots of older men from that era, or gay men who were from the same era. That was a very big dilemma. I graduated in '59, so I started school in '60.
Okay. And so, you know, yours seems more of an academic thought process versus spiritual. So there was no issue with the church or anything here?
No, there really wasn't. But I was actually a real spiritual kid. I had gotten involved in reading the Bible and religious thought when I was much earlier. I recently found a Bible that my mother gave me when I was 7 years old. My mother died about 3 weeks ago. And among her things was a Bible that I had inscripted myself, that this is a Christmas gift from my mother in 1948, so I would have been 7 years old. I was very interested in lots of information around me, and so I had tackled on my own reading the Bible, and I read it a couple times in that era. And I went to a neighborhood church for very nice people. It was nothing denominational, just sort of a collective group of people in a little white church that I used to go to pretty much every Sunday, go to Sunday school. Nice people, but I didn't really get involved in any conflict with who I was and the religion at that point. And so in a peculiar way, I'm lucky because I didn't face that head-on collision with strict religion saying, no, you can't be who you are. But also I never had the conversation. So maybe that's part of the answer. You know, I just was who I was, and you know, a nice bright kid who was enjoying Bible stories and studying the scriptures and singing hymns, and that was probably as close as I got to any real discussion. Exactly, and I think that's a very good way to put it. When you say it was all love, the emphasis was that everybody's God's children, you know, and the songs of the day were, you know, black and white, yellow, white, all valuable in God's sight. I don't remember the exact lyrics, but those things I took kind of literally, and so did my family. So maybe that was part of the reason, that there was a real tone of acceptance. And I think maybe it was part of the Depression and the post-war era. People had been through a lot, and they weren't really into conflict. There was a new society building. Smart people were aware of that. And maybe in some way those were some of the good influences that helped avoid this collision. No, you can't be this person. I'm sure it happened in lots of places, but I wasn't subjected to that at all.